Hello guys, and welcome to another Multiblast workflow tutorial with me, Eldarin from Lotus Lemire. Today we'll be looking at Motion Builder in Cinema 4D and how to export our animations to Motion Builder and get them back into Cinema 4D. Alright, today's tutorial is going to be a little bit more of an advanced tutorial. I have an introduction to Motion Builder on my channel. I'm sure most of you have seen it. If you haven't, I would definitely go and revisit that one, as some of the techniques I use there I'm going to use here, but I'm not going to go over in too much detail. Things like creating a BVH library and how to import BVHs into an FBX package that you can easily import back into Motion Builder, as well as a few introductions to story and things like that. But alright, this one's going to be pretty fun. We're going to take Testa 2 here, our Testa revamp, and we're going to have her pick up a object off of a table or something, and we're going to have her do a sword swing, actually. So it's going to be a katana. We're going to do a sword swing, and then we're going to have her do a flip, just to show off some of the story capabilities. As well as be able to use some layer techniques and different things like that. I'm also going to go over a little bit of the bone system stuff. So I've been playing with Motion Builder a lot over the past year or so, improving my skills there. And one thing I've noticed about the Genesis skeleton, as far as Motion Builder is concerned, Motion Builder has, in its hand bone systems, 4 finger bones. But the Genesis figure has 1, 2, and 3. So it's missing the 4th bone. And as a solution, I have in the past, one time, for like one particular animation I did, I tried actually adding the extra bone, and this would be the optimal way to go, as you would have, the full bone hierarchy that Motion Builder is looking for. However, it is a time-consuming strategy, as every single Genesis figure that you import in would require you to go in and just manually place these bones. Now this is really a simple strategy. If you want to go that route, you would just come into your hierarchy here in the object manager, and you go under, let's see, okay, we're looking at our right hand right now, so we go under our hand hierarchy and we just select pretty much all of the end bones for each finger, like so. So we've got our right thumb and our mid end joints. Come to our ring finger, grab our ring end joint and our pinky, and there we go. And then all we would do is just in the viewport here, go into our translate, and we would just hit Control and translate out some new bones there. And that would give us the extra bones we would need. Then we would just go into the right view, the top view, and the front views, and pretty much just fix up the bones that way. One other extra thing you would do is you would change the hierarchy. So instead of the end bone coming off of the second bone in the finger, you would just change the hierarchy like so, so that the bone would come off the last finger, and that would resolve that issue. And give you the extra bone. You wouldn't need to do any extra weighting. The bones are just mainly auxiliary. In Motion Builder, basically, it acts as an IK bone for the control rig in Motion Builder, and allows you to basically be able to translate and move the fingers, which is a more intuitive way to animate. When I actually created those extra bones, I actually got a much nicer animation capability, a much nicer animator toolkit out of the skeleton with those extra bones. However, I'm going to show off a technique that I haven't tried yet that may actually prove to be a faster solution as well as allowing us to have that elegance of having that extra bone. All right, but enough with the deductions. Let's go ahead and start this up. So I've done a few iterations of test. I've just been testing out different things, trying to belt down the hair system, and trying to get good render times and trying to get good dynamics out of the hair, out of the Cinema 4D hair system. Hair has been a particularly challenging piece of geometry and animation and stuff. It's like one of the last horizons for me. I'm trying to figure out how to really get good hair animation for some of my future animations, and it's been tough. If you guys know any good hair tutorials out there that whet my appetite, allow me to get a little bit better at that, so that I can actually come up with a really good tutorial for you guys, that'd be great. I've also been working with the cloth system, and I've come up with some really interesting solutions to the cloth. So I may or may not be making a tutorial about that soon. As far as getting the cloth dynamics looking really good and getting really fast viewport response in here, because that's always been a difficulty with this high-res model. It's always been difficult trying to get the cloth to animate in a good real time and be able to really mess with the physics and really get good cloth deformations on a moving character. But speaking of cloth, highly recommend Marvelous Designer. I'll definitely be doing a tutorial on Marvelous Designer at some point, because it has an amazing cloth system as well, and it completely goes around the whole entire dynamics. The need to do dynamics in Maya or 3ds Max or Cinema 4D as far as clothing is concerned. It's a very powerful clothing simulator. I would definitely go to marvelousdesigner.com and look at their introduction tutorials, and just look into that software. That software is amazing. But alright, let's begin. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and save this as Testa03MB. MB for Motion Builder .c4d. And this is just going to allow us to separate our editor version from a motion builder centric version of our file. So just allow us to go ahead and delete some things that we don't need, while at the same time having a copy of our Cinema 4D version that we can go back to that has all of our Cinema 4D specific stuff in it. Alright, so what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and delete the poses out of this scene. We don't need them in Motion Builder, and they're just going to clog down Motion Builder. So most of our face poses actually are relative animations now in our pose morph tags. They're technically actually stored in her mesh. So we don't really need those poses at all. They're useful just in case you want some extra pose morphs and extra pose morph functionality later down the road, and you're animating in Cinema 4D and you need some more power there. We do need the bone system. We do need all her meshes, but we don't need any of this extra data like the lights and the phase shift data or the sound object, the cameras, the lights, and this cloth object that I was working on. None of that. So we just need just a really clean scene. We also need to bring in any props that we're going to use in Motion Builder. So let's go into our folders here, and we'll bring this over, and we'll go into local render jobs. We'll go to Tester 2 here, and let's see, I have a Katana FBX file that I've downloaded from a certain website, tf3dm.com. It's a really good resource for some quality 3D assets. You know, you can find a lot of good stuff here. I think it's free for training and educational use. I imagine you can get in touch with the developers of some of these assets and ask them about commercial use if you need that sort of thing. Or you could use it as a you could use them as probably templates to go ahead and create your own type stuff. You know, use them as a good reference material for, you know, just designing your own stuff. That way you can keep all your stuff original and you don't have to worry about commercial rights and all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, so I think I did a search on Google. This came up, and then, you know, I went through there. But you could also do a search here. You probably find a bunch of katanas, swords, or any other object prop that you want to have her hold on to. Doesn't necessarily need to be a sword. Just thought that would be an interesting tutorial. All right. So with all that in mind, if we just drag our FBX directly into our viewport, it should. It didn't. But I was expecting it to import into the current scene. Luckily, what we can do is we can just go ahead and select all of this, do a Control-C, go to our window and go back to Test 2 and just do a Control-V in this scene. And yeah, we'll change the texture paths to absolute. It's fine. Just to give myself a little bit of an advantage here, I'm going to go ahead and do some cleanup on my scene. I'll go ahead and see. Let's figure out where these textures are for this object. Let's see. So we can go to our window and go to our texture manager, or I actually happen to have it up here on my dock. Very simple to do. Go to customize, customize commands, and you can type in any command here. So I've actually added my content browser and my texture manager up here. You type in content browser will come up, and you can just straight drag and drop it wherever you want it. So that's a really good way to get your icons into places that you want them. Very, very fast way to quickly customize your Cinema 4D workspace. Alright, so we're going to go into the texture manager and see where these textures are specifically. And it looks like I don't actually have textures for these, so it wasn't able to actually figure out where those were. I don't think it's going to hurt us too much in terms of render, but let's check. Go ahead and render this out and see what this looks like, and it still looks good. Ultimately, I'd probably replace the metal materials with a procedural visualized material. Come in the content browser here. Alright, and the content browser is open. Took a little bit of a minute. Let's see, so I would come in here to my visualize and come to my materials and probably just add some really nice metal material here, you know, to these different parts. And I find that those look a lot better. Or any material packs you have, I'd probably just replace those materials instead of using textures. Especially since this is more of a film scene rather than a video game scene. But anyway, we need to go ahead and get rid of the camera that came in with the katana, and then we're going to need to go ahead and scale down the katana so it fits really nicely in our hands. So let's go ahead and create a null, and we can name that katana. And we'll go ahead and grab all the katana composite parts and go ahead and just drag them right into katana. And there we go. And we can just go ahead and scale this down, zoom in a little bit, let's rotate it a little bit this way, and rotate it a little bit that way. And I'm just trying to align it with her hand so I can get an idea of what the appropriate scale should be. Alright, cool. So it's a little big. Let's go ahead and scale it down some more. You can actually go ahead and change its pivot too. So we can grab the null here, turn on the axis mode, and go ahead and change the pivot of the null so that it's actually on the tip of the katana. Let's go into our top view. That'll help us do this. So let's see, we want to put it just in the center of the hilt. I think it'll work really well there. Alright, go into my right view and position it there, and go into our perspective, and it looks like it's in the right spot. Turn off axis mode, and you can go ahead and keep moving this thing. Alright, and it's more like a I forget what the term is for a small Japanese knife. I want to say nigiri, but I could be mistaken. This is more like a two-handed katana size right here. This will work out pretty nicely for us, I think. You obviously can scale it to taste, or scale your prop to taste, depending upon what you want to do. But that'll work for us. Alright, so let's go into our content browser again here. And let's see if we have any props. So I've got a few packs here that you may or may not have. You know, I've got some furniture packages here from 3D Models. Their 24th collection modern dining room furniture, and I've placed all this stuff into a lib4d file. So it's very, very easy for me to get at and drag into my scenes. You know, just basically building libraries up of stuff. Architecture models, I have another from Arch Models. I have their 59 pack, which has some tables as well. I think we're going to go with the 3D Models modern dining room furniture, and we're just going to grab a basic table here. Doesn't really matter what we grab. I guess I'm going to grab this one, and let's go ahead and Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit of a test here. I'm going to stand up and just see where I'm at as far as my computer desk is concerned. Because that was about the height that I created my reference footage for this. So yeah, I think I want to scale this up just a little bit more so it's closer to her hips. So I just scaled it on the z-axis, which happens to be this object's up and down axis currently, given that the axis point's all messed up. And that'll do. All right. So let's see. Let's just create a nice plane for her to walk on. This will allow us to also determine, you know, where our walking animation should be. You know, so she doesn't penetrate the floor. And cool. All we need to do now, scale that up a little bit so she has some room to walk. We'll move the table, not the plane, the table. Move the table this way so she can kind of sort of walk up to it, and we will place the katana on the table. Now, interesting thing about this, you could actually place the katana in Motion Builder and have it just randomly be where it is here in Cinema. It doesn't really matter, because ultimately we're going to use a pretty interesting technique in Motion Builder, and then when we retarget in Cinema, all the objects will basically snap to where they were at in Motion Builder. So ultimately don't worry too much necessarily. It depends on which application you prefer. But you don't necessarily need to worry so much about actually getting things aligned perfectly in Cinema per se, if you're going to be doing all your animating in Motion Builder, because ultimately you're going to retarget the objects anyway. But in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and get my object to look pretty decent here in Cinema, so I have just like a baseline to work off in Motion Builder. You can always change things in Motion Builder as I see fit. Alright, so the katana is basically laying on the table, and I'm going to move it so that she can easily pick it up from the table. Cool. And I'll just leave her where she is. We'll be moving her around and changing her up in Motion Builder as well. So that takes care of our initial scene, and we're good to go. So next we're going to go into Motion Builder and begin to start animating this. So to get into Motion Builder, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to export this out as an FBX. So now that we've got all our pieces in, and we're going to go ahead and save our Cinema 4D file, hitting Control S. Now we can go ahead and go ahead and hit the export button and export to FBX. And there we go, testa2_03_MB. Go ahead and put this in the FBX folder and hit save. And we'll go ahead and just keep everything, that's fine. And there we go, we've exported only what we needed directly to Motion Builder. Now, a caveat here. If you plan on doing some really advanced or really heavy scenes, there's a few pointers that I'd like to give you. Proxy objects are really nice, and they can save you on a lot of problems, especially if your computer is like really low on memory, or you have a poor graphics card, or you're just struggling to animate a particular scene. So if we look at this object here, and we go into Go Red Shading Lines, this one's not too heavy on the polygon count. However, she is 10,000 polygons. She's extremely heavy, and if we had like 3 characters that were all Genesis characters in the scene, and they were all trying to do stuff, and then we had like a huge landscape and a mansion, and you know, a whole bunch of other objects, Motion Builder get bogged down pretty quickly, even on my semi-powerful machine, my prosumer machine here. So in that case, what you might want to do is you might want to quickly go into your content browser and grab like a simple Cinema 4D object. Let's see. Under Cinema 4D, we have a sculpting built right directly here in this R14 and R15. I'm using R15 myself. But we have some base meshes, and we have, you know, a basic female base mesh and a basic male base mesh here. These two base meshes are really low on the polygon count. I think they're like around 1,200 quads. So very low poly. You bring the model into the scene, scale it up, fit it to basically fit the skeleton, and then bind the skeleton to it. You just easy to do that. You just close out the hips, middle click the hips to select all of the children. Select the base mesh that you would bring in from the content browser, and just do a commands and bind. And Cinema 4D will do a pretty decent job of weighting that mesh, especially since it's so low poly. It actually does a really amazing job of actually binding that low res mesh to this skeleton. You could take that in the Motion Builder and use that to animate off of. And then you can retarget the animation to Testa later. and that way you save on some memory there. And I've used that technique on a few more advanced projects where it was just too many polygons for Motion Builder to really handle very well. This scene's kind of low, but if you still run into issues, that's a valid solution. The other thing is camera angles and shots. Plan your scene before you go into Motion Builder. Just really plan it. Write it down. Write down what you're gonna do. Storyboard it. You know, draw in Photoshop. If you got a Wacom tablet, you know, just plan this out. Whatever software you want to use, Excel spreadsheets, Word, whatever have you. You really need to sit down and you really need to just frame in your mind what shots you're gonna have, and it really helps to break those shots down into piecemeal sections. Basically, create separate Motion Builder projects for each separate camera angle, because usually each camera cut is going to be about 5 to 10 seconds long. I recently did a project that's on my website actually. The D-Boy Blackout Genesis project, where I did a little 3D animation. That scene was 51 seconds, the longest animation I've done yet, and yeah, it really bogged down Motion Builder. It wasn't to the point where I couldn't get work done. It's just the load times were significant when I had to load up Motion Builder. In Cinema 4D, you know, the workspace speed was really slow. You know, it was a big deal. It was a big hassle. If I'd have broke that shot up into like 7 Cinema 4D scenes, because it was 7 camera angles, and each one of those camera angles had been like, you know, maybe 5 seconds. Each one of them would have loaded a lot faster. I would have had a much nicer workflow. You can always piecemeal stuff together at the end into After Effects, and honestly 7 separate scenes that are each like only 200-300 frames each really helps in your network rendering workflow as well. You can just send one project to one computer and render it on one, render shot 2 on, like, say your Mac, render shot 3 on, say, your Windows computer downstairs, render shot 4 on this computer here, so forth and so on. So you can really break things up and really keep things, you know, more organized according to, you know, how the story flows. So I would highly recommend that as a workflow, instead of trying to, you know, create one monolithic 1-hour project and trying to put all your animation into that one project. It can be really tough. But I digress. We've exported our FBX. So now let's go into Motion Builder.